Hopefully you're able to hear me. My name's Robin Price, and I would like to welcome everybody to the first ever webinar hosted by the Dance Movement Therapy Association of Australasia, also known as the DTAA. The event tonight is entitled Mind-Body Awareness and Practical Strategies, and will be presented by Noa Belling, who is in Cape Town in South Africa at this moment. Just as a way of introduction, I wanted to let you know about myself. As I said, I'm Robin Price. I'm a member of the DTAA's Professional Development Committee, and I'm a professional member of the DTAA based in Sydney, Australia. I'm delighted that we're welcoming people from around the world this evening. And I note that it is our intention as we go forward to offer a more flexible way of offering or accommodating the professional development needs of our members, many of whom are located in diverse areas geographically around the Australasia region. Before we commence though, I would, I think we're still waiting for our presenter to come online. There's just maybe a technical hitch here. But I would like to start by paying my respect and our respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, and indeed the lands upon which this meeting takes place, and also pay my respect to elders both past and present. Before we start, I would like to hand over now to Sandra Laufenberger to introduce our speaker and take you from here. Thank you and welcome.
All right. So thank you, Robin. I'm Sandra Laufenberger, those of you who may or may not know me. I'm also a committee head in the Dance Therapy Association of Australasia. So I welcome you, and I welcome all of the dance therapists and everyone else here. Noa Belling is a somatic psychologist who graduated with a master's degree from Naropa University, which is in Boulder, Colorado, and she specialized in dance movement therapy. She's had over a decade of experience running a private psychotherapy practice, teaching somatic psychology skills, and offering talks and workshops in the corporate sector. Noa has written several books on yoga as a body-mind practice, but today she's going to speak to us on her latest book, as we've said, The Mindful Body. This offers practical information about managing stress and building emotional strength through body mindfulness. So as Noa's speaking to us from her workplace home in South Africa, so welcome. We've been hanging in here, and off you go.
A little bit about me, first of all, is thank you, Sandra, for the introduction. My name is Noa, and one of my areas of passion has been in creating a bridge, an introductory bridge to the world of the body into areas like education. I taught for many years at a college in South Africa, offering introductory somatic skills to counselors, psychologists, coaches, facilitators in training. And I also enjoy working in the corporate sector and using these skills, weaving the body-based awareness into the practice. And this idea of working with people who had very little and have very little experience in body awareness made me really feel passionate about creating a book that would be a nice bridge for people like that, for people everywhere, to help promote this concept of living in our bodies, to feel more enjoyable, to feel more rewarding, to feel safer. So to start with, I like to be interactive, so I'm going to offer you a skill from my book, from the book, The Mindful Body, and then I'm going to elaborate on the kinds of skills that are offered as this entry level to help people with simple things that are obviously not so simple, like managing stress and being able to work with their emotions by referring to the body. So the first thing I'm going to invite you all to do is to take your hands and let's all put them on our head, just to notice how this feels. Let your breathing be natural as you do so. And then take your hands and place out wherever it feels most comfortable to do so. Following this, give your arms, I'll sit up a little bit, give your arms a rub and a little squeeze. And even though you won't see this, place your hands over your knees and give your knees a little support. Just holding where it feels most comfortable on top of your knees. And to end, place your hands in a prayer. Feels most comfortable. And as one final ending, let's choose the one that is the most comfortable, the most rewarding for you, whether it was on your head, your heart, on your arms, or your knees, or the prayer pose. Choose the one that feels the best for you to hold for a few moments. Noticing how your body might shift through this act of supporting your body through your hands in these ways. And then release or continue holding if you wish. When we notice what has happened, this is something that I will often ask the recipients of touch. As many of you know, of course, you are just preaching to the converted. You all have many skills in this area. I really enjoy the way that a very noticeable shift is often felt through most people, except those few who are not receptive to touch. How the kind of feedback is that it's instantly calming, instantly helps people to feel maybe a little less stressed. And I go on to explain that the simple act of placing your hands on your body can increase your feel-good hormones and decrease your stress hormones as a way to help people in a very practical way and in a matter of sometimes seconds to manage their stress response. So as I speak with you who all know a lot about living in your body, one of the things that came into my mind is how to make these skills accessible to a broader audience. And this is the way in the very first chapter of the book that I open, is with this invitation for people to support themselves physically in this way and begin to and offer that as one resource. And if I were to describe the essence or the key skills that are throughout the book, they all hinge on the idea of taking, I call them mindful body moments, pausing now and again in the day to apply the body awareness in particular ways that might apply to different things. So we might use our hands to help support with stress. We might pause in the day to do a body scan from head to toe. And as you do that spontaneously, one tends to release any stress held in the body. There's also the idea of grounding and centering. I'm giving you a few of the ideas that are offered in the section of stress management, simple skills. And I link this. One of my fascinations has been watching the field of neuroscience and being able to see how these mini gaps are being seen as resources for not only helping us feel more relaxed, raising our feel-good hormones, lowering our stress hormones, but also helping our brains to think more clearly and for us to be able to access more of our brains more easily, more fully, our logic, our rationality, our creativity, really getting out of our way to be able to be more fully who we are, to feel more comfortable, to feel in touch with our inspiration, our creativity, our logic. And this idea of, I call them these mindful body moments, which are 30-second pauses, was taken from the idea in positive psychology that we nowadays, as probably many of you know, it's not all about looking at our problems. It's really also proactively investing in our health that is being seen to be really important, valuable in psychological growth. And looking at, as I was researching for the book, looking at some of the current ideas about this, some of the neuroscientists, I think his name's Rick Hansen, says that even 30 seconds of pausing to invest in some positive psychology behavior, and from this body perspective, there are these 30 seconds supporting the body through touch, 30 seconds pause while you're on the computer, while you're walking to the loo, while you're standing in the shopping line, while you're in the car, to scan your body. Am I sitting like this? And naturally allowing the scan to iron out, help you breathe a little more freely. And other acts like grounding and centering through placing 2 feet on the ground or 2 hips on the chair are very accessible ways to invite people to insert many moments through their day to catch the stress response and begin to turn it around towards not only greater relaxation, but greater access to our brains. Because as we relax, as our feel-good hormones increase, so does our access to our more evolved parts of our brains, so that we can simply be our more intelligent versions of ourselves. And I use the example, let's say we've got two, kind of like a Gestalt principle of taking 2 parts, 2 aspects of ourselves. One aspect is this tense version, even subtly or more full-blown, who can shout and snap and be irritable, lose your temper. And then a few minutes later, you might wake up into, oh, what have I done? Like the more intelligent version of us suddenly snaps in, and we look to this other part of ourselves and think, what have I done? What have I said? Hopefully apologize. And this idea of having these 2 aspects, the slightly worked up, agitated or depressed or whatever it is aspect, and the more relaxed, clear, open-minded aspect of ourselves, is a nice way to illustrate, I find, again, looking at some of these concepts to layperson, which is at the heart of what motivates me in making this work accessible, is taking these key mini pieces of awareness. So some of these mindful body moments of taking 30-second pauses is to help shift from this way that many of us carry this low-grade level of anxiety, tension in our bodies, or collapse in our bodies, and just to help bring some awareness gently through our touch, through our body scans, into our body, so that we can step out of our way, step into more of our intelligent, resourced state of mind to be able to deal with whatever's in front of us, not to get rid of our problems, but to deal with it more resourcefully. So this idea of mindful body moments permeates the whole book and becomes applied to various things. So we can have mindful body moments to help us work with stress, taking these 30-second pauses to help us create new habits of living in a more open-minded and ultimately open-hearted way in our lives. Later in the book, it gets applied to emotions, and we look also at some simple skills. For example, if you're upset, if you're feeling down, it's natural that your body will respond. Of course, we all know this. We're all in this field with body awareness being our focus. And I use this example when I'm addressing people. If I feel down, I might tend to stoop my posture. And if you try this on, you might be able to contact how this might feel familiar. And what a lot of people are not aware of is how the body can also play into our feeling down. So when we look at the emotional side of it, and ultimately creating little mindful body moments to invest in our emotional resilience and well-being, the awareness is that not only do, when we feel down, we stoop, when we stoop, have a habit of living this way in our bodies, it also perpetuates our feeling down. And there are 2 ways that we can work with this. The one way Again, I acknowledge I'm preaching to the converted, and this is really looking at the lay person. The one way is to go deeply within the process. And there is some information, I love the science around this, of looking at how our emotions create an entire, bring to mind, bring to body, a whole history of all time, of many times we may have felt this way. So when we're feeling emotional, our brains tend to remember. It's very hard to recall a happy memory when we're feeling down. When we're feeling down, we tend to call to mind all the times that remind us of this feeling down. And two ways, so we can either, I also include in the book what I call mindful body processes, which are longer, slightly longer opportunities, guided processes to begin to go into these states and say, what are some of the memories, and use imagination to support what are some of the needs. And also to emphasize this is self-help with many pointers to people who need more support. So this is just a little bit of empowerment, a little bit of a sense of, oh, this is what the link is. This is familiar since I was younger. These are the kind of memories that come up as I feel this way, linked with my feeling depressed, linked with my feeling anxious, or whatever it might be. So that's the one way to be with it, is to extract information. Another way to be with it is to practice emotional adaptability, is to use our bodies as a resource, especially when we don't have the time or it's not the place to be going deeper into our history around and what's truly needed in terms of our emotions and how our body holds them. We also have the opportunity to, if you try on stooping your posture and then ask your body unfold to a new posture, body first, allowing your body to simply move to a more comfortable position, perhaps a more open position. Perhaps breathing is clearer. Notice what your words are as you try this on. And an exercise that links very nicely into some of the science of what's involved for neuroplasticity, especially emotional neuroplasticity, is this idea that we're able to touch into and ultimately tolerate the experience of our emotions. So let's say we go back into them, we touch the old neural circuitry, the old patterns, and then we're able to experience shifting into something new. So this idea of the body responding first, rather than saying, well, I choose to feel inspired or happy, and then it's like a secondary process. Then I can either choose to feel, allow it to seep into me or not. But if I simply go body respond, it takes away my mind and allows my body simply to open. And again, coming back to that idea of accessing our more resourced state, clearing our brain to think a bit more clearly, to deal with whatever's in front of us. A neuroscience called Dr. Bruce Ecker, who summarized this very nicely. He's got a book, I think it's called Unlocking the Emotional Brain, where he really speaks about this importance of touching into the old, unfolding to the new. So this is an exercise I also offer in the book around the working with emotions, is a simple act of being able to catch yourself when you're feeling down and go body, unfold to something new. And maybe to do that 2 or 3 times, kind of like you're able to touch the old shape and unfold to the new. And then really notice, and again, that 30 seconds, at least 30 seconds, and what that 30 seconds is doing is helping the message really seep into our brains, register in our brains, register in our bodies, allow our biochemistry to shift according to how we're feeling, towards feeling more open, more resourced to deal with whatever is in front of us. So just as a quick recap, there's the mindful body moments, the few seconds you can apply to working with stress, helping to counteract the stress hormones, helping to raise the feel-good hormones through acts like touch, through acts like a body scan, where spontaneously we shift our bodies, through acts like grounding and centering, placing 2 feet on the ground, 2 hips on the seat. And then looking later, these are just little tasters of some of the ways that I've attempted to offer this material and simplify it, is working with emotions as well, is really noticing how do emotions live in my body. If I have time, there are guided processes for going deeper into what are the memories, what are some of the early memories, what are some of those early needs, and being able to use that information. Or if there's more limited time, simply the adaptability of being able to shift my posture to shift my mind. There's an entire chapter called Change Your Posture, Change Your Mind. And by the way, I was interviewed when I was in Australia on television and on the radio, a few times on the radio, and pretty much everyone was interested in change your posture, change your mind. There seems to be an interesting hook for people to go, oh, wow, I can shift my posture and my state of mind changes. And for me, that's a fairly superficial application of body awareness. And it's a valuable entry point, perhaps, for those who are not familiar with this realm of body awareness. Another area that I like to offer as an introduction, and it's in about the third or fourth chapter, which is actually called Change Your Posture, Change Your Mind. I've also introduced some of how our personality lives inside of our bodies and try to make it as user-friendly and engaging as possible. So let's try on some of the beginning of that chapter, which is 4 different postures, 4 postures. First one is place your hands on your hips. I'll move my camera a little bit. Place your hands on your hips and notice how your body shifts towards opening your chest. Then place your hand over your heart as you did earlier. And notice how that shifts your. A third one is bring some movement, almost like a band into your body. In the book, I actually represent that with arms reaching up and reaching high up into the sky, kind of like a victory pose. That also helps to create a certain set of feelings. And finally, bring your hands together into a prayer pose. Each of these 4, I'll go through them again, is reflective of certain personality characteristics that are elaborated on. And this one I find that people really appreciate because it links very nicely into some of the personality profiling systems, all the way from Jung through to DISC, through to another system called Insights. I have enjoyed studying those, and for me, they really are reflected in the body. So let's go again. This one with hands on your hips. Amy Cuddy, a Harvard researcher, popularized this one. If you hold this position, considered one of the power positions, for, she says, 2 minutes, it raises your levels of testosterone, which is your confidence, and decreases your level of cortisol, which is your anxiety. And this is a great one to offer for a quick confidence boost before an interview, a presentation, or if we have to have a conversation with somebody who might feel threatening to us, we could stand with our hands on our hips and then ultimately lose the hands on the hips so that we're not too confrontational in the way we come across, and simply carry some of that in our chest. So that's linked with increasing testosterone. And again, as a mindful body moment, people can use this in just a matter of minutes to shift literally their biochemistry. If we come to the second one, hand on the heart, this is linked with traits like caring, sincerity, and linked with the hormone of estrogen, which it was quite popularized in a book by a woman called Dr. Helen Fisher. She speaks about these hormones, the biochemistry of different personality types. This one's linked with estrogen, and is either you as drawing on this trait for the sake of coming across more sincere, contacting your caring, or being able to engage with somebody who is more like this, or it might reflect something about your personality that's naturally more caring, nurturing. The third one was reaching your hands up in the air like a victory pose. I find it nice with hands open, or simply to bring movement into your body. I find that they're linked. This helps to contact more of an easygoing attitude, more maybe fun-loving, more creative, a person who tends to look around more, notice the environment, gesticulate while they're speaking. And this is linked with the neurotransmitter called dopamine. We're simply shifting our posture. Here we get our inner strength and our testosterone a little bit boosted, no matter if we're a man or a woman. Here we get our estrogen. If we loosen up, we can open up to new perspectives, take on more of a fun-loving, easygoing attitude to help us access our own creativity. And the fourth one is whether as a personality trait or as something we wish to draw on, this I called calm, centered thoughtfulness. It's actually linked with the neurotransmitter serotonin. It's more of a quiet internal content as opposed to the fun-loving dopamine, which is more excitable. This one is linked with the more thoughtful, perhaps analytical type of person. I had the choice with this one whether to use the thinker pose or I consider this more of a prayerful wisdom pose, and I found that one more inspiring than this one feels a bit tortured. To be able to come together, pull together and go inwards and access more calm, inner content, thoughtfulness, reflectiveness, center. You might consider, as I've gone through these four, which one you might relate to most. Are you more of a direct, perhaps dominant kind of person, very comfortable with leadership and with access to personal strength, no matter if your insides do feel shaky still at times? Sometimes others can see this in us more better than ourselves. Or do you relate more to being the nurturer, the kind, caring nurturer? Or the fun-loving visionary who can see things differently, who wants things to just lighten up, and who, as opposed to going like 1, 2, 3, 4, we can see things going 1, 2, 5, 7 and making sense in ways that maybe others can't see. Because sometimes this kind of dopamine kind of personality can see things ahead of time, can be visionary in ways that the other personality types don't have as easy access to. And then we've got this one. Do you relate to this one? So take a moment and just consider, which one do you feel is your top one or top two? This one, this one, this one, or more of this fun-loving, inspiring, motivational type of personality. And of course, we're not one. We all have access to all of them. And one of the ideas when using these as mindful body moments is that we all can also access some of these traits, even if we don't naturally fall into that category. I'm wondering at this stage, because I see it is already 1:15, I'll just give a brief idea of what is contained in the rest of the book. And I actually was sitting in a different place in the room earlier, but I was moving my computer around to try and get a better reception. So here is the book. And in the mindful body, there are a number of chapters, and I see them as really guiding people. I've introduced perhaps the first few chapters here in working with stress, in working with personality and this idea that it lives in our bodies, all the way through to emotions and how they live in their body, how to work with them, how to increase our adaptability, our ability to be perhaps resilient, or called emotional strength, all the way through to applying it to even our internal world of dreams, or to when we have ailments and injuries, applying little mindful moments to pause, be aware, and ultimately to be aware compassionately to whatever our inner experience is, whether we're looking at our stress, our emotions, aspects of our personality, or whether we're looking at our physical ailments or injuries. And right at the end of the book, one of the approaches to dance therapy that I really resonate with is authentic movement. Kind of like as if that was an end goal of saying, yes, we want to clear our brains, we want to live in a more relaxed, freer way in our bodies. And for me, it's also about accessing vitality, playfulness, feeling alive, feeling comfortable in our own skin. And in the very last chapter, I use a couple of those practices to really invite people into moving their processes, using mindful moments, not only to simply notice and do a body scan, but also to take it further, to actually move your internal experience, dedicate a little bit of a time in a day or a week to doing that, towards living more comfortably in our bodies, towards accessing the vitality, the joy that we can experience when we come out of our living so much in our heads and into our bodies, which really is what I love about this work, and what I, ever since I've been very young and was a dancer, have considered as a really amazing, quickly effective approach to psychology. I'd like to pause at this point and just see if there are any questions. That I don't see anything at the moment in the Q&A, just to see if there's anything that anybody would like to ask me or to say at this point.
Noa, there are quite a few questions. If you scroll all the way down, there's one about touch.
Yeah. Okay, let me come down this list. Okay. Yes, great. I wasn't scrolling down. So now I see the touch. Does self-touch produce the same benefits on a biological level as being touched by another? And this is the question that comes up. Touch is much more potent when we experience it from another, but because of the sensitivities around touch, because of not being able to get the extent of our touch needs met, and I really go into this in this first chapter of the book. I call it Greeting Your Body with Touch. I touch on some of the using touch with others and how it can be a touchy subject. Yes, it can produce significant benefits to apply self-supportive touch, measurable benefits that can raise your oxytocin levels, measurable benefits that, and I want to also clarify something. So yes, it can. Maybe there's more impact with others. I'd like to also add that this idea, and I want you to try this for a moment. Oftentimes we will, let's say, have a headache or just be feeling stressed, and we might go, kind of instinctively trying to support ourselves, and then we let our hands go and we go back to our computer or whatever we're doing. Well, according to that 30-second rule, that's not going to cut it. We think 30 seconds is quick, but actually, if we can just pause and take 30 seconds, I'm going to count it in my own mind and let you know. Let's choose this one. It's a nice one. Place your hand on your heart and you have a gentle smile on your face, even if you're faking it, just to add, or you can call on a positive memory. By the way, this one's a great antidote, measurable way to help lower the anxiety response. And for some who get really good at it, it can even turn around a panic attack. So place your hand over your heart, gentle smile, and hold it. I'm going to count 30 seconds for you to get a sense of how long 30 seconds is. And see if you can keep staying with it. Okay, we're starting. Just about, and done. Don't know about you, but when I first really cottoned onto this, that's much longer than you would naturally think that it is. So in order to really get the benefit of touch, sometimes I ask people to touch in a few areas, like I asked you in the beginning, just to keep you in the touch space for that 30 seconds or longer, so that you can really get the biochemical shifts to begin to happen. So I guess that was what I'd offer as the way to really get the benefits of self-supportive touch that absolutely can have a significant and measurable difference. I'm going to just keep moving down, and feel free to keep putting these questions through. What hormones are associated with the prayer pose? It's serotonin. And I go into some detail if you'd like to look at that. I look at the difference between, you've got two ways that you can feel content and happy. You've got kind of a quiet, introverted, more introspective way. These are the ones most happy in their own company. And then you've got this excitable, fun-loving dopamine way, which is more about which is more about an externally focused, extroverted kind of way that we can experience happiness, joy, enthusiasm, excitement. So that's the difference between the quiet content and the outward focused excitement. Then I have, how's this associated with Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory, DMT, ambergris, trauma work and body fullness article written by Christine Caldwell. Yes, and you're doing some research into recent research integrating DMT with neuroscience. So yes, and I'd love to stay connected, please. I'm on LinkedIn, I have a Facebook page, lots of ways that we can do that. So yes, I bring in some of Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory towards the end of the book, and I refer specifically to the social nervous system when I look at our bodies remember, and bring in some of that awareness of, again, the internal benefits and the difference between that slightly anxious or tense or collapsed state versus when we are connected with all the nerves associated with our ability to interact with others, to feel warmly connected. And that's also linked with our access to our prefrontal cortex. So it all links in the simple language with accessing our brain more fully, and along with that, our ability to connect and to feel compassionate. And later on, I explained that in terms of the social nervous system and some of the work of Stephen Porges, absolutely there's a link. And body fullness, so Christine Caldwell was my teacher at Naropa many years ago, and she wrote a foreword to my book. So it's not a direct link with her body fullness, but we definitely overlap in our areas of interest, in our influences. And she's one of my big inspirations. So yes, there is a link. And in terms of ambergris trauma work, I studied with her a little when I was at Naropa many years ago. And all I can say is that anytime we access the body, I just particularly remember her accessing a sway. That's saying that that's one of the ways that she would incorporate a way to both assess and treat, and that would be one of the gauges of how people could access the sway. And again, it's this kind of flow state that can link with the polyvagal theory, that can link with an attitude of mindfulness. I believe that all theories can be overlapped in terms of working with the body and finding that flow state. There's a lot of trauma work with the body that goes into that. So I'm sure there is a link, although I couldn't speak fully to ambergris work at the moment. Do I also talk about the quality of our touch to our own body? I wonder how it affects the actual impact. I know some of my clients have challenges to access gentle qualities to others and themselves. Yes, thank you for that question. I would say that I offer many different approaches, saying that, and I know there's a small percentage of people. Generally, when I've run workshops, I've done a lot of talks over particularly the last month since launching the book. And what I find is that I generally start with some kind of touch, as I did with you all. And I find that most people are like 99% even, or 95% find that beneficial. And there are a few who do not resonate with it, raises their anxiety levels. So I would say then see if that can maybe be something you can work towards, to help them access gentle qualities to others and themselves, or otherwise go for other approaches using awareness to body posture, including a simple body scan in your therapy sessions. By the way, this idea of mindful body moments was very much, I'm sure many of you work in your ways that I'm sure are also incorporate this, but I've worked a lot in contexts where not a lot of body awareness is there to start with, and just including mini moments, people to notice their bodies in relation to what they're talking about, eventually begin to engage in some natural movement in response to whatever we might be working with. Those of not speaking and going into the body also are valuable to be able to access. Almost like a self-compassion can begin to come out of that when we really begin to notice, and even notice how we are harsh towards ourselves. Of course, we'd also want to work with that resistance just as much as we'd want to work with those lovely soft qualities, because those resistance might be our protection against things that really happen that need attention first before people feel safe enough to really open up and be more gentle towards themselves. I don't see any more questions at the moment. Feel free to still pop them through.
So Noa, this is Sandra again. It's almost 8:30, but since we started a bit late, why don't we go till 8:40? Okay, so that gives you just a little over 10 minutes.
Sure.
Okay.
So I'd like to remain open to any more questions, and then I will end with a mindful body moment, something to help us take something from this moment. I know that in my world, to integrate some of how I work with clients and what I offer is often something I need to remind myself about. So I'll just give another few moments if anybody would like to ask a question. And maybe as you're doing that, simply to spend now noticing what you are carrying now in your body. And perhaps there's a question that your body feels motivated to ask or is curious about. And I will go into what, there's anything more I want to mention. Notice your body, different parts of your body. Maybe notice the quality of your breathing. See if you can bring a little bit of heart, as we did earlier, connecting with the self-supportive touch over the heart area. See if you can surround no matter what you're feeling. Because as we know, it's not always about shifting. I find that I tend to lean very much towards a positive psychology, offering empowerment experiences to people first to help them feel stronger in themselves. And for me, one of the things that I enjoy doing is actually, if I feel a bit low or if I'm feeling a little angry or irritable, is sometimes to simply be aware of that and go into my day and kind of see, well, what's that got to offer me, or what perspectives, almost like play with. Christine Caldwell actually used to speak about this, is we don't want to get rid of all the different aspects of ourselves. We just want to become aware of them and almost be able to access them consciously and use them for play, to play with our different aspects. Sometimes with my children, I turn into a fire-breathing dragon. Other times, I'm kind and warm-hearted and compassionate. Other times, if I'm feeling low, I take it very slowly. I'll remind myself, invite myself to take it really slowly through the day. And I've noticed what I notice as going through the day like a sloth or like a snail. And these are things that I'm sure for you all, it's much easier to access than for many for whom that is a bit, maybe a step later, a step further from the simple awareness and the little wins that they can make. So the first half of the book is giving people little wins, and the second half of the book is going a little bit deeper into the psyche. See if there's any more questions. Okay, so I'll continue I thought maybe to go through some of the different chapters and just give you a little bit more of a sense of what is contained in the mindful body. And if you have a question, please send it through and I will keep my eye open to that, and I'll continue to offer in this to fill in the time that we have. So we start with the introduction that it really introduces to people this idea of mindful body moments, an introduction to different kinds of memory, which are really one of the areas that I am fascinated in, is the way we store memory in different ways, explicitly with our narrative and our storyline about life, and implicit through our emotions, through our procedural memory, our physical experience, and how we can access that and work with that as actually the most influential aspect of our lives, much more so than our storylines. And that leads into this idea of taking these mindful body moments as a way to really work with touch into even age-old patterns. I go into a chapter on brainwaves, and I find this fascinating for, again, as an entry point for people who are not understanding. It's very common to hear people say to you, let's get out of our heads, let's get into our bodies. Like, get out of your head, get into your body. But what does that actually mean, and how might you be able to even get a sense of what that is? And in this chapter on brainwaves, I've looked at some of the different states from your normal. Now you're probably in a beta brainwave state, which is fairly, it's concentrating, it's engaged with what's in front of you, and then downgrading to the calmer alpha brainwaves, the imaginative theta brainwaves, all the way down to your sleeping delta brainwaves. Then also touching on this wonderful new world of gamma brainwaves, which are like, by the grace of the moment, when we're in the zone, when we're in our flow, or when we meditate on compassion, we can naturally stimulate this state, which is linked with all these things, this ability to access our brain more fully, flashes of insight, bursts of inspiration. It links with the polyvagal theory and that social nervous system, and really being our fuller human self, which is really what this work is all about. And at the end of each chapter, I offer a mindful body practice or mindfulness practice. At the end of this chapter, there's a practice that is reminiscent of Dr. Dan Siegel's Wheel of Awareness, where I ask people to spend a few moments scanning through. Let's be in our thoughts. Notice your emotions. Notice your body. I use a grounding here. Place your 2 feet on the ground, 2 hips on your seat. Notice your breathing. Imagine if you were fast asleep. Access that inside of you, that quiet delta brainwave. And then to connect with gamma, or the idea of it, placing your hand on your heart and that little smile again. Just feeling that warmth seeping through, almost like it's uniting and warming and inviting so much more of your brain and your body into the picture. Of course, it's a process to get there for those who don't feel safe and got things to work through, but it's an aspiration. And it's something that we can all experience, even just one tiny bit more of. So that's an example of an awareness practice there, to simply have people be more mindful. And I use this concept of mindfulness as being in the present moment. And like Dr. Kabat-Zinn says, paying attention on purpose. And he adds non-judgmentally. And now there's further research to add with compassion is one of the aims. And the body mindfulness is simply using the body, which lives in the present moment. As we all know, only our thoughts can live in the past or in the future, but our body is naturally here in the moment. So we might access it through any ways that we are aware of our bodies. We become more mindful. And so the book continues to give little experiences, and each chapter is like is an offering in itself. It can be read even in isolation, to have an experience of mindfulness, of body mindfulness in these different ways. Have a look again if there's any more questions. And to keep moving through the book and its contents, then we have Change Your Posture, Change Your Mind, which looks at the way our personality lives in our bodies. And then followed by the chapter of emotions, which is a big, I gave you a taste of some of the ways that I've tried nothing to give them some little hook, some way that they can gain some access, and then reinforce that further support from professionals may be needed, but at least people can perhaps have a little bit of that sense of self-empowerment. Okay, here's another question. Thanks, Monica. I haven't actually read the names, but thank you for everybody for your questions. The practice of body mindfulness is lovely. Wondering if this can be used in children, teens that are going through severe anxiety due to a cycle of violence. Absolutely. I've actually given this book to a number of people who have children and a couple of counselors. And because I didn't specialize in working with children, there are many in the dance therapy field who do, and I'm sure you use body mindfulness in your own ways. What I've actually requested is that they apply these tools, whatever they feel inspired to do. teenagers and ask them what I like about this body field is simply this idea of how we have the ability in the palms of our hands, in our bodies, to literally influence our biochemistry, our access to our brains. And so my logic would tell me that absolutely it applies. I just have not done that research yet, although the word is out, the invitation is out. Please apply it. Please email me feedback. I've already been asked when's the book need input before doing that, but absolutely. And I believe that there's actually a study, and I refer to it right in the beginning of the book, done by some Harvard researchers, that this idea of living in our beta brainwaves, so much in our thinking, they're now directly linking it with anxiety and depression. And so this idea of coming into our bodies, living more organically, I speak later in the book about living more in tune, not only with taking mindful body moments, but listening more to our bodies in the simple ways, finding ways to rest, even if we have to work, finding little ways, if we are tired, to bring in a bit more rest. If we are hungry, to eat till we are satisfied as opposed to full. These are simple concepts that all link together ultimately for what I believe will make for a better world. Whether it's us as adults or children. So absolutely, I believe it's life skills for all ages.
Let's see if so Noa, this is Sandra again. I presume you wanted to finish with a little body mindfulness experience, did you say? We have about 2 minutes left.
Let's do that. So let's simply take a moment to choose let's use this one. At the very end of the book, I include 2 meditation practices. One is for calming, relaxation, and the other is for more of an energizing. I'm going to use the calming, relaxing one now. So just taking a moment with everything that you've listened to be with and notice what is inside of your body space, your mind space. What are the sensations? Where do you experience them? And then imagine as if your attention was like water seeping through a sponge, or light moving through your body, whatever image works for you. I like water seeping into a sponge. And begin from your head to simply drench your body with your awareness, moving smoothly, fairly quickly from your head, through your neck, shoulders, down your arms, all the way down to your hands and fingers, through your chest, all the way down through your torso to your hips. Letting your awareness seep into all parts of you, through your hips, all the way down to your knees, and down to your ankles and your feet and toes. Feeling of being touched by your own awareness. Yes. And then coming to a sense of maybe what you drew on earlier, a happy thought or a smile for the sake of smiling, as a sense of bringing some gratefulness, some appreciation, love towards yourself. And if that's difficult for you, you can radiate it out to the world, a sense of may others benefit from what you've experienced, sending love out and allowing yourself to bask in the warmth of the love of your heart. Perhaps focusing it on someone who needs a little bit of support, on yourself, or sending it out into the world, staying with this experience of love for a few more seconds. And if your eyes have been closed, you can open them now, gradually. And otherwise, I offer that to you as a simple ending, simple meditation, simple acknowledgement of our be passionate about wanting this contribution. So thank you for listening, and I hope there's been something in it for you all. if there's any words that now I'm back on, if it's anything anyone wants to say as a final word, I'd be happy to receive it. And otherwise, just to say thank you all for making the time.
And thank you, Noa. I would like to thank you for taking your time. And I don't even know what time it is in South Africa, but thank you for making that time and meeting us all.